Welcome to Truth to Live By with Pastor Mike Brown of the Southside Praise and Worship Center on Southeast Street in Hillsboro. And now, Pastor Mike Brown.
Welcome back to Truth to Live By. I am Pastor Mike. September the 11th already, and time is marching on. I think today is, in this world, we just seem to be totally out of control of life, what's happening. Seems like nobody can really get a grip on it. It seems like it's moving faster. I made the statement somewhere I went to sleep in my 30s and woke up in my 60s, and it just seemed like life has a tendency to want to pass us by. So therefore, that being said, today's message is simply walking in control. You ever feel like you're out of control today, not knowing what you're doing, where you're going, or what the next moment will be? Well, this is probably it. In Mark chapter 6, and when even was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. This is when Jesus had preached to the multitude, and he's standing there, and they're launching out into the sea. And he saw them toiling in rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And about the fourth watch of the night he came unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed them by. You know what? I thought that was always an amazing statement. He was going to walk right past them while they were in the midst of trouble. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit, and cried out. They was thinking there's a ghost here. For they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them and said to them, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. I love that old song, Be Not Afraid, and it is him who walks upon the waters today. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure and wonder. For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. And when evening was come, a ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. This is another statement I've always found intriguing. The fourth watch of the night was after 4 a.m. And by the sea here is meant the lake of Gennesaret. Now, the lake is about 7 miles broad at its widest part, so that in 8 or 9 hours they had only made some 3.5 miles. They're only halfway in the lake. By this time, therefore, they in a state of exhaustion and despondency, bordering on despair. Ever find yourself straining at a problem only to realize you seem to be going nowhere with it, and there's nothing you can get accomplished by it? Sometimes I go to work every day, and the more I do, the farther behind I seem to be. And the list can go on and on and on. But I want you to take notice. If it's important enough for Christ to pray, remember, that's what he told me. He says, you guys go on out into the sea. I'm on out and pray. Then it ought to be important for us to be praying. As we look here at verse 48, he says, and he saw them toiling in rowing. How often in reading these scriptures I have rushed past this statement. If Christ is still on land and they are in the midst of the sea, they're 3.5 miles out, and they're in the midst of a storm, so you can't see much in a storm, and he is still able to see their situation, then Christ is surely able to see me in my time of need. So often we find ourselves in situations, and Satan convincingly assures us we're all alone. There is no more helpless feeling, it seems, than just to feel alone. Many times I've wondered when a mother sees one of her children that is hurt, physically or emotionally. When they got a scratch or a cut during their youth, it was easy. She could hug them up and kiss the hurt away, and all was well. But as they become older, their emotional battles take place, and mother feels helpless. She'd like to hold them once again upon her lap. She'd like to squeeze them close next to her heart. And mothers often find themselves at the point of helplessness. and we say, all she can do is pray. But this morning, I say it's the only thing that we can do. But we have to remember God sees the trouble regardless where we're at. Even when you are in the midst of your most trying of times, when you are in the battle you seem that you cannot win, when you can't see, God says, be not afraid, because I can. For the wind was contrary unto them, the scripture says. In other words, everything was going against them. They were rowing and seemingly getting nowhere. So in the midst of bad trials, even when your storm is raging, when you're in your own emotions, we expect God to answer immediately. That's when we find Him watching to see what we're going to do. Understand, these are not just ordinary men that we're talking about today. They were veteran sailors. Do not ever think that Satan will not even try the most seasoned of Christians. I wondered in my life many times, have I not found myself in the midst of emotional or even physical battles in this life? And sometimes I forget, though I shouldn't. I just need to pray more. When it seems all too late, seems like when everything is not going our way and there is no more hope, it seems like that's when Christ shows up. You see, then when He came to them this time, it's late, the fourth watch, somewhere between 3 and 6 a.m. in the morning. Seems like it's always darkest just before the dawn. But I take notice. Now, notice this. In the scriptures here, he says, notice that Jesus is walking on top of the water. He's not swimming. He's walking on top. The very thing that would surely drown Peter, we find Christ is above it all. That which would drag you under, Christ walks above and on it. He controls the very elements which surround you. He wishes to empower you to rise above everything. Walk above your troubles. Christ says, come unto me. But I noticed this too, and He would have passed them by. Notice how Mark gives this statement, would have passed them by. When God does show up, it appears He will go on by. If this is the case, then it must be a ghost. And fear sets in. We begin to imagine all sorts of things. Isn't God watching? We soon forget that all the many miracles He has already performed in our lives. They were sore amazed in themselves and wondered. For they considered not, had they diligently considered by what power 5 loaves and 2 fishes were multiplied to a quantity to feed 5,000 men besides women and children, they would not have been as amazed, or either at the sight of Christ walking upon the water, or at the wind ceasing when He came into the ship. They had forgotten the miracle He had just did. And you think that God is not in control? But these things had not made that due impression upon the disciples' hearts. It should have. The time was not yet come, I guess, when Christ would have His divine nature fully revealed, until He opened their eyes and wrought their hearts a full persuasion of that He was Jesus Christ, Lord, the Son of God. It was not in their power to apprehend what they were seeing. Oh, what visions there would have been. I can only imagine seeing everything go calm, seeing walking on the water. Wow, what a statement. What a statement is being made here. Their hearts will come to the full knowledge. Their hearts will soon know but he will have to be crucified before they will grasp the inevitable fact that he was truly God. The statement would have passed him by is a touch particular and a little peculiar to Mark, as though he disregarded their distress. Thus he acted towards the sisters of Bethany. He often sees fit to try faith and to elicit prayer, even while he designs to bestow his gracious help. He's looking to see if we're ready to ask. This morning we need to learn to walk on and above our fears. Even when God seems to be passing by, have faith, knowing even when we don't see him, he sees us. Today we need to take control of our lives, change the things that are wrong, and fear not, for even when we think he sees us not, he sees us even in the midst of the storm. Join us again next week as we study the Bible, discovering truth to live by. I am Pastor Mike.
This has been Truth to Live By with Pastor Mike Brown of the Southside Praise and Worship Center, 621 Southeast Street in Hillsboro. Join Southside Praise and Worship Center for Sunday School at 10, worship service at 11 on Sundays, and Wednesday Bible study at 7 p.m. If you have questions or comments, you can email the pastor at pastormike8420@yahoo.com.